My blood turned to ice when Margaret Hale leaned across the table and called me street garbage. The word landed clean and sharp, like she had practiced it. The room went quiet in that expensive way. No gasps, no protests, just the soft scrape of silverware stopping mid-motion. 60 people froze in their seats. Investors, senators, hedge fund partners, people who made decisions with other people's lives before dessert. Margaret didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Power never does. Across from me, Julian stared down at his steak like it had personally betrayed him. He kept cutting, slow and careful, as if precision might save him from choosing a side. The table waited. So did she. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not embarrassment, Clarity. This wasn't a slip. This was theater. My name is Claire. I am 34 years old. The thought arrived fully formed as my fingers tightened around the stem of my glass. Steady enough that no one could accuse me of shaking. I had built companies, buried projects, signed agreements that moved markets. And somehow I was standing here while a woman who had inherited everything decided I was small. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. The wine tasted wrong. Sour. I swallowed anyway and let my hand drop to my phone beneath the table. The email was already written. Subject line short, attachment clean. I pressed send and placed the phone face down beside my plate. Margaret was still talking, enjoying the silence she'd purchased, halfway through a sentence about standards. Her phone buzzed, once. Loud enough, she glanced at it. Annoyed, then curious. The color drained from her face as she read. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. I stood. Enjoy your birthday. I said, calm, even. I just withdrew the license to the core algorithm. Effective immediately. A few people laughed. The way they do when they think something is a joke they don't understand yet. Margaret didn't laugh. I picked up my coat. Julian finally looked up, mouth opening, then closing again. Too late. Whatever he planned to say would have been for him. Not me. In the final stretch of the evening. As the murmurs started to swell, a quiet note deserves mention. This story is a work of fiction created by our writing team, shaped from imagined events and characters. I walked past the table without waiting for permission. Past the portraits and the polite smiles cracking at the edges, feeling something irreversible settle into place. If the table had decided I didn't belong, what exactly had I just taken from them? Julian caught up to me halfway down the drive. Breath uneven. Jacket still buttoned like he expected the night to rewind. Claire, wait. The word wait came out thin, stretched by panic. Not guilt. I stopped. Not for him, for myself. I needed to hear which version of him had followed me outside. Fix this, he said. You don't understand what you just did. The plea wasn't for me. It was for the house behind us. For the name carved into the stone gate. I told him the license was gone. I told him it couldn't be put back. He rubbed his hands together, eyes darting. Already doing math that didn't include me. My family's legacy, your family's debt. I cut in. The words landed heavier than I expected. His shoulders dropped a fraction. He swallowed. They're drowning. The board gave us one window. One. Us. He still said it like that. The truth slipped out because it had to. Because the plan required it. It was my idea. He admitted. The dinner? The comment. He winced. Then rushed on. Public pressure works. You were supposed to fold. Sign the transfer. Permanent. We'd make it right after. After what? After the company survived. After his mother kept her chair, I felt something detach cleanly inside my chest. Love doesn't shatter. It loosens. How long? I asked. Did you think I'd keep pretending I didn't see the knife in your hand? He stepped closer, voice dropping. It wasn't personal. It was strategy. That was the moment it all aligned. The silence at the table. The confidence in Margaret's smile. The way he never once looked surprised. He hadn't frozen. He'd been waiting for me to break. If the man sharing my bed was a part of the plan, how many others were playing me too? I took my phone out again. Not to threaten, to check confirmations. More were coming in. Julian saw the screen and reached for my wrist. I pulled back. Go inside. I said, they'll need you. He hesitated, then turned, already choosing survival over apology. I walked to my car, knowing the damage had started and the debt collectors would soon realize who owned the silence. Marcus Reed didn't call. He sent a calendar invite. No greeting. No explanation. Just a time. A secure line. And a subject that read, urgent alignment. I joined exactly on the minute. His face appeared. Already composed. Already sure this conversation belonged to him. You made a bold move last night. Not admiration. Assessment. I waited. He shared his screen. Spreadsheets. Internal transfers. Dates highlighted in red. Margaret's signature appeared more than once where it shouldn't have. She's been moving money. He said, small amounts? Often. Enough to keep the lights on without triggering alarms. A pause. It's illegal. Justice. Delivered calmly, like a service. You're bringing this to me because I asked. Because you're the variable she didn't account for. He leaned back. With your algorithm pulled, the board is looking for an explanation. I can give them one. But timing matters. There it was. Not concern. Opportunity. He talked about cleaning house, about stability, about the company needing a steady hand after Margaret fell. He never said the word CEO, but it hung between us anyway. I nodded in the right places, asked the right questions, let him believe I was listening instead of measuring. If he was willing to sell out his own chair so smoothly, what did that make me in his plan? I'll need assurances. I said, protection, autonomy. Of course. He smiled. We're on the same side. I sent over a draft agreement while he watched. He skimmed it, satisfied. His focus stayed on the top line. Titles. Timing. He didn't notice the clause buried near the end. Quiet. Narrow. Written to shield exactly one person. Me. Marcus thought he was offering me a crown. I knew he was handing me a mask. We ended the call with mutual confidence. The dangerous kind that comes from thinking you've already won. When the screen went dark, my inbox filled with responses. The board was restless. Margaret was silent. I saved the agreement and waited, letting Marcus enjoy the illusion that he had just recruited a weapon instead of becoming one himself. Margaret broke her silence with a press release. Not an apology, not a concession, a victory lap. By noon, every internal channel lit up with the same headline, Hale Industries unveils proprietary alternative. Phones buzzed. Traders cheered. The stock climbed back to where it had been before I pulled the license. Then a little higher, like confidence itself could be traded. In the hallway outside the executive floor, conversation stopped when I passed. Someone laughed behind me. Another voice followed, low and satisfied. Guess we didn't need her after all. An invite hit my calendar. Mandatory, compliance review, no names attached. Just a room and a time. Inside, the questions came fast and clean. Access logs, email chains. Who had touched what? When? I answered without filling the silence. The chair at the end of the table stayed empty. Margaret didn't attend. She didn't have to. Later, during the internal demo, I watched the screen like everyone else. The product looked polished, familiar. Too familiar. I recognized the architecture immediately. A version I had shelved months ago. A prototype I had marked "Do not deploy in plain language" because it failed under edge conditions. Because it tripped a federal safety threshold the moment it scaled. Because it was fast and wrong. Applause filled the room. Someone clapped too hard. What happens when arrogance ships a product that was never meant to leave the lab? I kept my face neutral. Let the questions pass me by. Let the engineers sell confidence they hadn't tested. Silence was part of the design now. After the demo, an email landed from compliance. Tone clipped, deadline tight. Another followed from legal, asking for documentation I knew they didn't have. Outside the glass, a junior engineer stared at the floor, hands shaking, already understanding the math. Margaret had survived the blow. The market believed it. I closed my laptop and sent one message to myself. A date circled. A reminder set. The trap didn't need a push. It needed time. The badge reader flashed red on the first try. I tried again. Same result. The guard didn't meet my eyes when he stepped closer. He didn't have to touch me. The space he took was enough. An email arrived while I stood there. Short, cold, effective immediately. Another followed before I could lock my screen. Access revoked, then another. Accounts restricted pending review. They walked me out anyway. In the lobby. Julian was waiting. No jacket, no smile. He looked like someone who had practiced relief and landed on fear instead. We can still fix this. His hand hovered near my elbow, not touching. You went too far, but it's not over. I asked him what he wanted. He didn't hesitate. Marriage. Quiet. The code. He framed it like mercy. Like I should be grateful the offer still existed. He talked about protection, about starting over, about how this could all disappear if I stopped fighting. I let him talk. Let him believe the ground under me had finally given way. What happens after I hand it over? The question came out flat. You'll be safe. He said, we'll be safe. Safe meant silent. Safe meant owned. I opened my bag and took out the drive. Small, ordinary. I placed it in his palm and closed his fingers around it. His shoulders loosened. He thought this was the moment he'd earned. He thought I was finished. What kind of man accepts victory when it's handed to him by someone he betrayed? He nodded once, already planning how to explain this win to his mother. I watched him turn, watched the drive disappear into his pocket. As he walked away, my phone buzzed with a single confirmation. No names. No celebration. Just a green check where it mattered. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. The horse was already inside the gate. The boardroom doors closed without ceremony. Marcus sat at the head of the table, posture relaxed. Already wearing the outcome, a folder lay open in front of him. Papers aligned with the confidence of someone who believed the room would follow his lead. Margaret took the seat to his right. Expression controlled. Chin lifted like the title still belonged to her. I walked in last. A few heads turned. One sharp inhale. No one asked why I was there. Marcus started. Numbers. Violations. A timeline that pointed cleanly at Margaret and nowhere else. He spoke about duty, about stability, about the need for decisive action. He slid the vote across the table like a gift. I waited until the last sentence settled. Before you vote, I said, stepping forward, there's one item missing. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Marcus didn't look at me. He smiled. You're not on the agenda. I'm on the balance sheet. Silence pressed in. I set a single document on the table and turned it so they could read. Not ownership, not shares. Debt. Every line item that had kept the lights on during the rebound. Each one traced back to the same fund. Mine. During the chaos when the stock climbed and everyone rushed to celebrate, I had been buying quietly. Obligations. Notes. Promises nobody expected to be called. Marcus finally looked up. The color left his face as he understood the math. What's worse than being fired or being owned? Margaret stood slow and furious, but the room didn't move with her. The chair she'd ruled from was already empty. I'm not removing you, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm calling in what you owe. No vote followed. There didn't need to be one. Marcus tried to speak. I raised a hand. He stopped. The crown he'd imagined slid off without a sound. Margaret's phone buzzed. Then another. Then another. She didn't read them. She didn't have to. I turned toward the door, the papers still on the table. The decision already made. Behind me. The room shifted into damage control. Ownership changes everything. And I had just changed who everyone answered to. Margaret waited in the glass conference room like the walls still belonged to her. She didn't sit at first. She paced, heel to heel, stopping only when I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The city hummed outside the glass, indifferent. This ends now, she said, voice sharp. Name your number. I took the chair at the head of the table and folded my hands. She noticed. The pacing stopped. You don't get to do this. She tried again. I built this company. You leveraged it. I corrected. Poorly. Her mouth tightened. Bargaining came next. Board seats. A public apology. a private one. She moved through them quickly, like items on a checklist she'd never had to use before. I slid a tablet across the table. One screen. One line highlighted. Julian's name. Her eyes flicked once, then twice. That's a mistake, she said. Too fast. He's family. He's expendable. I replied, so are his assets. Frozen as of this morning, the threat finally surfaced. Legal action? Influence? Names that used to carry weight. She leaned in, close enough for me to smell her perfume. The same one she wore at the dinner. If power can be bought, what does legacy really mean? She read my face and found nothing to push against. I stood. She didn't. You called me trash because you thought blood made you untouchable. I said, trash survives. Empires rot. Her knees buckled. Not all the way. Just enough. She reached for the table and missed. I turned the tablet back toward myself and tapped once. The door opened from the outside. 2 people stepped in, already avoiding her eyes. As they let her out, she said my name like it was a warning. I didn't answer. Through the glass, I watched the hallway absorb her. The chair across from me stayed empty. I picked up my phone and sent one message. Next agenda item. Marcus arrived early and took the center seat without asking. He straightened the folder in front of him. Careful. Ceremonial. The room followed his lead out of habit. Old instincts die slowly. Congratulations. He started, smiling like the word was already his. We can move fast if we stay unified. I didn't sit. I connected my tablet to the screen. The clause appeared first, buried, clean. His eyes skimmed past it, then snapped back when the room shifted. That's boilerplate, he said. Too quickly. Standard indemnity. Read the last line, I replied. He did. His smile thinned. The air changed. The door opened. Compliance stepped in. Folders already labeled. Not dramatic. Efficient. They didn't look at him when they spoke. Unauthorized disclosures. Side agreements. A consulting arrangement paid through a shell he forgot to hide once the stock rebounded. Small violations, stacked carefully. Marcus stood. This is retaliation. The chair across from him stayed empty. I let the silence do the work. The board watched his hands as they curled into fists, then opened again. He tried to laugh it off, then tried anger when laughter failed. You used me, he said. Turning to me now, I nodded once. You volunteered. What happens when every man who wanted power is suddenly unnecessary? The vote didn't take long. Not because they agreed with me, because the risk was now his. He gathered his papers, slower than he'd arrived, and stopped at the door like someone waiting for permission that wasn't coming. As he left, another message landed on my phone. Margaret's exit finalized, assets reclassified, titles erased. The board looked to me. I didn't take the seat. Next, I said, the throne was gone. That was the point. Julian waited outside my office, hands empty, shoulders drawn in like the hallway might judge him. He didn't start with anger. He started with history. Memories placed carefully, like coins he hoped still carried value. I let them fall to the floor between us. They took everything. He said, no drama, just fact. The accounts, the board seat, my name. I nodded once. The door behind me stayed open. I wasn't inviting him in. He tried again, softer. I didn't think it would end like this. It never does for the person who expects to land on their feet. What do you want? I asked. His eyes lifted then, wet and stubborn. Another chance. Silence pressed in, not heavy, clean. You didn't lose me when you betrayed me, I said. You lost me when you thought I'd still choose you. He flinched, like the sentence had found something exposed. He stepped closer, then stopped himself. The space mattered. Is walking away the cruelest ending of all? I loved you, he said, as if that should change the math. I know, I replied. That's why this is over. He looked past me, into the office he would never enter. At the people moving with purpose that no longer included him, he nodded, once, as if accepting terms he couldn't negotiate. When he turned to leave, I didn't watch him go. I checked my phone instead. Another notification. Another confirmation. There was still work to do. I closed the door and moved forward, already planning the next meeting, the next decision, the next pressure point that would make Chapter 10 inevitable. They say revenge makes you just like them. I disagreed. The room was the same one where Margaret had celebrated herself, right down to the chairs no one ever moved. Different faces filled them now. Engineers who used to speak only when invited. Legal who watched instead of nodded. No one waited for permission to breathe. I took the seat she once guarded. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. We're done, I said, letting the words land without decoration. Hale Industries is dissolved effective today. A murmur rolled and settled. No outrage, no applause. The decision had already reached them through contracts and calendars. The papers moved, assets split cleanly, teams reassigned, the technology redistributed into new companies led by the people who built it and were never credited for it. No speeches, no ceremonies, just signatures and quiet relief. Someone asked if I wanted to rename the holding entity. No, I said. There won't be one. I watched the realization travel around the table. Not confusion, understanding. The structure they feared was gone. The seat no longer mattered. When it ended, people stood on their own. They spoke to each other without looking to me first. That was the point. Later, alone for a moment, I touched the edge of the table and pulled my hand back. It didn't deserve sentiment. Here's the lesson I earned the hard way. Self-respect starts when you stop negotiating your value with people who benefit from lowering it. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're decisions. I didn't take her seat at the table. I destroyed the table so no one like her could ever own it again. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. I know stories like this can hit close to home. Share your thoughts if you want. I read them. And if you want more stories about choosing yourself and holding the line, stay with me. I'm not done yet. Your job here is done. The words cut through the conference call before I had time to mute my mic. No warm-up, no buffer. Just that sentence. Dropped while the largest enterprise client sat on the line. Listening, the CEO didn't look at the screen. He looked at me. A pause followed. Not the awkward kind. The deliberate kind that dares someone to challenge it. My calendar blinked once, then collapsed. The shared dashboard refreshed, and my name slid off the account column like it had never belonged there. Someone at the far end of the table shifted in their chair. I heard it through the room speakers. The client window stayed open. Cameras on. No one spoke. This is part of our realignment. The CEO continued, already turning his laptop so the room could see the new org chart. We're moving to a more scalable model. A new name appeared where mine had been. The replacement was already seated. Hands folded. Laptop open. He nodded too early. Like he'd practiced. I smiled before I could stop myself. Not because I agreed, because the timing was almost perfect. My name is Marianne Calder. I am 52 years old. The thought ran through me as I watched my access disappear line by line. The way it does when something you've been preparing for finally arrives and you realize you're calmer than you expected. The replacement started talking. Buzzwords. Efficiency. Continuity. He used my phrases without the pauses that made them work. I noticed he never once said the client's name. The CEO leaned back, satisfied. Silence, to him, meant compliance. On the screen, the client's general counsel adjusted his glasses. The head of procurement folded her arms. No one interrupted. No one objected. That silence pressed harder than shouting ever could. Another click. My email permissions vanished. The shared drive locked. The CEO didn't look back. He didn't have to. The system was doing the work for him. For clarity, this is a fictional story created by our writing team, inspired by real corporate dynamics and imagined consequences, told for narrative purposes only. The meeting wrapped itself up fast after that. Action items assigned, next steps scheduled. My name never came up again. I closed my notebook and stood. The replacement avoided my eyes. The CEO was already smiling at the screen, thanking the client for their time. The client disconnected last. Why didn't they say a single word? My phone stayed quiet all the way to the lobby. That wasn't normal. Not because I expected comfort, but because the people who mattered never stayed quiet when something changed without warning. At the security desk, the guard glanced at my badge and then at me. Still working here. His voice dipped on the last word. For a few more minutes, I didn't slow down. Outside, an email hit my screen. HR, no name, just a department address. You are required to return all company property by end of day. A separation meeting has been scheduled. No greeting, no signature. Policy pretending to be procedure. I didn't reply. I opened my calendar instead and found the reminder I'd set a week earlier. Back when the CEO started canceling my one-on-ones and replacing them with alignment check-ins that felt like audits, I'd known something was coming. Not the timing, not the spectacle, just the direction. A week before, I'd sent a routine strategy memo to our 3 biggest clients. Nothing emotional. Renewal cadence, escalation paths, continuity planning. The kind of document no one questions. Except for 3 lines buried in the middle. Continuity requires named accountability. Any material change in personnel must be documented. Ethics and control standards must be preserved without exception. To leadership, it read like boilerplate. To legal teams, it was a spotlight. My phone buzzed again. An email from a client address I only saw during contract negotiations. Subject line received, understood. 2 words, no signature. I sat in my car with both hands on the wheel longer than necessary, waiting for my pulse to slow. Another message followed. This one from a number saved under a first name only. Do not contact us on company channels. We're watching. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Were they protecting me or protecting themselves? I scrolled through my calendar again, past the empty blocks that used to be my days, and landed on the dates that still mattered. Renewal windows, notice periods, deadlines that turned trust into obligation. An unknown number called. I let it ring twice. On the 4th ring, I answered, Marianne. Don't speak, just listen. I straightened. We heard what happened, the voice said, and we've seen your name used internally. My grip tightened. If they try to sell us continuity with your face on it, the voice continued. We'll call it what it is. A pause. Fraud. The line went dead. Inside that building. They thought I was gone. I opened a new email draft and left the recipient field empty. My fingers hovered. Not because I was unsure, because I wasn't. I called the one person who would tell me the truth. Pick up. I said to voicemail. I need to know what they're doing with my accounts. The first forwarded email landed just after midnight, the kind that only shows up when someone forgets who's still on the list. The subject line was cheerful. Next steps and exciting updates. I waited, counted to 3, then opened it. My language was everywhere. Not copied, clean flattened. Phrases I'd spent years sharpening were stacked together like buzzwords pulled at random. AI-driven trust, automated relationship scaling, streamlined continuity. Continuity tightened my jaw. A reply followed from someone I recognized without needing a name. Short sentences. Legal training. Careful verbs. This assumes Marianne's ongoing oversight. Please clarify authority. The replacement answered almost instantly. Marianne's framework remains fully embedded. He wrote, operational approvals will continue as before. As before. My phone vibrated again. Another forward. Internal. Let's keep Marianne's name on the thread for continuity. No emojis. No explanation. Just instruction. I leaned back. Exhaled slowly. They weren't just filling my chair. They were wearing my face. A new message appeared from a client contact I hadn't spoken to since the call. No greeting. 1 sentence. He doesn't know our board. I typed a reply, deleted it. Typed again, deleted that too. Silence was still the right move. Another email came in, flagged urgent. The replacement was proposing a change to escalation protocol, one that required my sign-off 2 days earlier. The approval line showed my name. My chest tightened. That wasn't confusion. That was intent. How far would they go to pretend I was still there? The thread kept growing. Questions from clients. Confident assurances from him. My name floating between them like something everyone was pretending not to see. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring once. When I answered, the voice didn't waste time. They just told us you approved a scope shift. I didn't. I know. A pause. That's why I'm calling you. The line stayed open. Neither of us rushed to fill it. Inside the company, they were getting louder. Louder language. Bigger promises. Hoping volume could seal the cracks, I opened my laptop, pulled up my archived files, and started checking timestamps. If they were going to use my name, I needed to know exactly where they were leaving fingerprints. The termination notice didn't come to me first. It came as a screenshot. My phone buzzed once, then again. The subject line sat at the top of the image, blunt and unembellished. Notice of termination. Effective immediately, the sender was the contract inbox of our largest account. I stared at the timestamp, then the wording, then the timestamp again, like it might shift if I looked long enough. Another message followed. Legal is freaking out. My contact wrote, CEO thinks it's a bluff. I didn't answer. I zoomed in on the screenshot until the words filled my screen. No emotion. No hedging. Just clean. Professional damage. Pursuant to the business ethics and conduct provisions, we are terminating for material misrepresentation. My stomach dropped not because of the revenue, but because of that word. Misrepresentation. Pointed straight at my name. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. Marianne. The voice was calm. Controlled. This is Aileen. Aileen never called unless the decision was already made. I saw it. I said. I wanted you to hear it from me. A pause. They used your name. My jaw tightened. Tell me exactly how. They told our board you approved scope changes you never signed off on. No softening. They implied you were still directing strategy. Heat rose behind my eyes. Not tears. Anger. Focused. Why ethics, I asked. Why not key person? Because we didn't leave because you left. Her voice sharpened. We left because they humiliated you in front of us, then tried to sell continuity with a lie. The line went quiet. Not disconnected, intentional. Are you prepared to state that I asked? My voice held. My hand didn't. If counsel asks, if they argue, we'll provide the recording, Aileen said. We recorded the call. Of course they did. And don't contact anyone through company channels, she added. They're monitoring, understood. When the call ended, I stayed still, phone in hand, staring at the screenshot like evidence pinned to a board. This wasn't churn. It was a warning shot. I pulled up my notes from that meeting. I didn't need memory. I needed proof. Another email arrived. Not a client. From general counsel. Call me. Now, I opened a new folder and started collecting every thread where my name had been used as leverage. Whatever they were doing behind my name, they were escalating. The announcement didn't come to me directly. It never does when they want control. A screenshot landed from inside company-wide email, subject line trimmed for confidence, retention update, stability achieved. The CEO's tone was upbeat, the kind that pretends relief is proof. Appreciate the team's flexibility. The message read, client confidence remains strong. Another screenshot followed. A calendar invite titled, Celebration Sync. The replacement's name sat at the top, bolded. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a live thread. Still active. Still using my framework language. The replacement was answering questions fast, like speed could replace accuracy. Approvals have been streamlined. He typed, no disruption, no disruption. A new message slid in from legal, not to me to the client group. Emergency amendments executed to ensure continuity. Executed, past tense, final. I felt the old reflex flare, check the attachments, scan the signatures, look for the corner they cut. I opened my laptop and pulled up the tool I'd installed months ago. The one no one questioned because it lived where process lived. The tracker pulsed once, then again. A notification bloomed across my screen. Approval event detected. I clicked. My name appeared in the authorization field. Clean, correct, familiar. The timestamp was wrong. The device ID wasn't mine. I scrolled. Another event. Same signature, same authority, different location. They weren't guessing anymore. They were using me. My hand stayed steady as I exported the logs. I didn't need to think about motive. The act itself told me everything. Forgery isn't loud, it's quiet. It hides in systems designed for trust. What kind of crime leaves a paper trail this clean? Another message arrived from the CEO, finally addressed to me. Short, tight. Let's talk. No greeting. No apology. Before I could respond, a second email hit this one from the replacement. Copied wide. Marianne's framework remains active. He wrote, "We're aligned." Aligned. I saved the files, backed them up twice, then watched the tracker pulse again as another approval fired under my name. They thought they'd won because the room was clapping. I closed the laptop and let the silence settle. If they were willing to fake my authority to stabilize their story, they were already past the line where this could end quietly. My phone rang. This time, I answered. The call I answered wasn't angry. That was the first tell. "We need to align," the voice said. Clipped and careful, "There are approvals tied to your framework." I let the silence stretch until it hurt. On my screen, the tracker pulsed again. "Which approvals?" I asked. Finally, a breath on the other end. "Scope adjustments. Temporary." Temporary didn't explain why my authority token had fired from a city I hadn't been in for years. I opened the log and read it out loud. Date, time, device. The pause on the line deepened with each detail. When I finished, the voice tried again. Systems glitch. I switched tabs and shared my screen without asking. Rows of timestamps stacked neatly. Different IP ranges. Same signature. Mine. Another voice joined. Lower. More practiced. "We don't see evidence of misuse." I dragged a single row to the center. That approval happened after my access was revoked. A click. This one too. No one rushed to fill the gap. A message chimed from a client thread. Not a greeting, a correction. "We never received your sign-off." It read, "We were told you approved." I forwarded it into the call. If absence can sign documents, what else can it do? The practiced voice returned. Sharper now. "You're drawing conclusions." I opened a second file. "These are the access logs to the shared drive where my templates live." Another click. "Here's the login history since my reassignment." The first voice came back. Strained. "Those credentials shouldn't still work." "They do," I said. "And they're being used to influence active contracts." Someone muttered something off mic. A chair scraped. The practiced voice dropped its calm. "Are you threatening us?" I closed the share. "I'm documenting." A new call pushed through from a client I hadn't heard from since the meeting. I patched it in. "We can state, on record, that approvals were represented as yours," the client said. "We can also state they were false." The line went very quiet. "Send everything." The practiced voice said, "Trying to regain footing. We'll review." I didn't agree. I ended the call. I packaged the logs, screenshots, timestamps, IP anomalies, client confirmations. I labeled each file once and backed them up twice. Watching was over. Recording was enough. My phone lit up again. This time the number wasn't hidden. I answered. The CEO didn't bother hiding his anger this time. "You need to come back." He snapped the moment I answered. "No greeting, no pacing, straight to demand. You're contractually obligated to fix this." I let him keep talking. Threats land harder when you don't interrupt them. "You walked away from active accounts." He continued. "We'll sue if we have to. You know that." I looked at the folder open on my desk. Logs, screenshots, client emails, the kind of paper trail that doesn't care how loud someone gets. "I'll come back," I said. Silence hit the line like a dropped plate. As an independent consultant, I added, 24 hours, no extensions. His breath came faster. "That's not how this works." "It is now." He pushed back. Tried to regain altitude. "We're not paying some inflated rate." I named a number high enough to make him stop arguing and start calculating. Then I added one more condition. "All prior actions taken in my name are acknowledged in writing." Another pause. Longer this time. "Fine," he said at last. "Send the contract." I sent it while he was still breathing hard. Short document, clean language, Nothing flashy. The kind executives skim because they think urgency protects them. The signature came back faster than I expected. Time-stamped, complete. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I saved it and backed it up twice. They thought they'd bought my labor. What they'd actually signed was a confession. What did they just admit without realizing it? I arrived the next morning as promised. Same building, different badge, consultant access, temporary credentials. Everyone moved differently around me now, too polite. Too careful. The CEO avoided eye contact. The replacement didn't. "We need you to stabilize messaging," he said, sliding a laptop toward me. I didn't touch it. "I'm here to review," I replied, "not to operate." His jaw tightened. Somewhere behind us. A door closed harder than necessary. I opened my folder instead and started checking timestamps. Every minute I stayed, the trap closed a little tighter. The meeting invite hit everyone's calendar at once. Emergency, mandatory, no agenda. I took a seat halfway down the table. The CEO stood instead. He always did when he needed height. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice clipped. "This is an internal matter." I slid my badge across the table. Consultant access, active. "I'm here as the owner of the consulting firm currently holding your liability." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat and stopped halfway through. The CEO tried again. "We're not doing this." I opened my folder. No speech, just paper. The first page went down. Approval logs, dates and times, aligned in a way that made skimming impossible. "That's fabricated," he said too quickly. I placed the next page beside it. Device IDs, locations that didn't match mine. The replacement leaned forward. "Those are system artifacts." I turned the folder so he could see the client confirmation email. Single sentence? Clean. "We were told Marianne approved." She did not. Silence tightened the air. I added the contract he'd signed the day before. The clause highlighted in yellow. Acknowledgement of prior unauthorized actions. Reliance on my identity to maintain client confidence. His jaw worked. He didn't look at it. He didn't need to. Then the key person clause. Not the whole thing. Just the part that mattered. The part that dissolved restrictions and triggered remedies the moment my name was misused after termination. Across the table, legal stopped taking notes. I placed the final document last. Access history to the shared drive. Templates opened. Copied. Deployed. All after my credentials were revoked. If authority can't stop evidence, what does it have left? The CEO stepped back from the table. "This is absurd." I closed the folder. It's documented. No one argued. No one moved. The replacement stared at the wood grain like it might offer instructions. A phone buzzed somewhere. Unanswered. I gathered the papers and stood. "You should talk to your insurer." That broke something. Not loudly. Just enough. As I walked out, someone finally spoke behind me. Low and urgent. "Get finance." I didn't slow down. Finance arrived before legal did. That told me everything. The CFO took the seat across from me. Eyes already tired, a folder slid onto the table between us. Unopened. The CEO stood near the window this time. Hands braced on the sill like the glass might hold him up. "We're not insolvent." The CFO started. "Let's be clear." I nodded once and opened my own folder. "Your revolving credit facility was restructured last quarter." I said, keeping my voice level. The tranche tied to client retention metrics was downgraded after the first termination. The CFO's pen froze midair. I placed a single page in front of him. Not numbers yet. Names. Those notes were sold. I continued. Quietly, through a third party. The CEO turned. Sold to who I slid the assignment agreement forward. Signature block at the bottom. Dated. Clean. The CFO read it twice. The color drained from his face in stages. "You're telling us he stopped?" Swallowed. "You're telling us you own the debt?" "I'm telling you the entity I control does," I replied. Effective immediately. The CEO laughed once. "Too sharp. That's not possible." I added the next page. Payment confirmation. Wire received. No symbols. No drama, just completion. The room shifted. Chairs adjusted. Someone at the far end reached for a phone and thought better of it. If this is true, the CFO said, quieter now. You can call the note. At my discretion. Silence pressed down again. Heavier than before. How do companies die without making the news? The CEO finally sat. His mouth opened. Closed, then opened again. The words came out thin. Oh my God, it wasn't fear. Fear panics. This was a realization catching up all at once. I gathered my papers and stood. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to conclude this. The CFO looked up, eyes searching for a door that wasn't there. What do you want? I met his gaze. You already know. Behind me, someone whispered my name like it might change the math. I walked toward the door, paused just long enough to let it register. I'll expect your counsel's call before end of day. The door closed. The call came from counsel, not the CEO. That alone told me how it would end. We're prepared to resolve. The voice said, careful now. All client exits will be honored. The board has accepted the resignation. I waited. Silence has a way of pulling the rest out. And the note I asked, a breath, then paper shifting, retired in full. Effective today. Good. Clean endings matter. The replacement didn't reach out. The last I saw of him was a calendar cancellation with no explanation. The kind that disappears without making noise. Clients moved quickly once the paperwork landed. Short emails, direct language, no anger, no victory laps. They were done, and they wanted it finished properly. I respected that. An hour later, another call. This time from the CEO. Not loud, not defensive. We misjudged you, he said. We thought you were a cost center. I didn't interrupt. We won't contest, he added. We'll announce my departure quietly. I closed my folder. That's fine. The line stayed open. Nothing else came. When I walked out for the last time, the badge didn't matter anymore. Neither did the building. What mattered had already changed hands. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. They thought I was a cost to cut. In reality, I was the entire asset. Here's the lesson I'm taking with me if your value depends on silence and compliance. It isn't secure. Real value survives scrutiny, records its work, and sets boundaries before they're tested. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. I appreciate you listening, and I'd like to hear what you would have done in my place. Share your thoughts below if you want. And if stories like this help you think more clearly about work, power, and self-respect, stick around. I'll keep telling them. The papers hit the table hard enough to rattle the water glasses. And Marcus didn't blink. Sign it. The city pressed in from every side, rain streaking the glass walls. Traffic crawling far below the 50th floor, but the room felt smaller than a closet. He leaned back, fingers steepled, already bored. Litigation. Years of it. Breach of confidentiality. He listed the words the way people list groceries, confident the weight would do the work for him. I didn't reach for the pen. I watched the line where my name would go and felt the old pressure settle between my shoulders. The kind that tells you to choose quickly or be crushed. My name is Ashley. I am 41 years old. The thought slid through me while he talked, not as an introduction, but as a reminder of how many meetings like this I had survived by keeping my face still. He nudged the stack closer with 2 fingers. $10 million worth of compliance authority, stripped down to a signature and a threat. He believed the ink would end me. He believed the certificate was a trophy. I turned the pen once. Slow, heavy, cold. The cap clicked against my nail. You're certain you want me to sign this version? His mouth twitched. The smirk came fast, practiced. He pulled the page toward himself and signed first. Bold and quick, acknowledging receipt and responsibility as if it were a courtesy. The pen slid back to me. The room waited. I signed second. The pen dragged for half a breath, then flowed. When it was done, I set it down where he could see it, straightened the paper, and stood. Security shifted by the door. My badge came off without a sound and stayed on the table. Good luck with the inheritance. Marcus, you're going to need it in the morning. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. Outside, the rain smelled clean. Across the street, the building glowed like it always had. indifferent. This story is a work created by our writing team. I crossed without looking back. If losing everything sounded like freedom when it finally arrived, what did that say about the life I'd been protecting all along? Behind the glass, he was already celebrating. Security didn't grab my arm. They didn't need to. The taller one opened the door and waited. Eyes fixed on the hallway like this was already done. My badge slid across the desk toward him. He checked it once, then tucked it away as if it had never belonged to me. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, my phone vibrated. Then again, then stopped. The screen refreshed to a blank slate. Slack signed me out. Email followed. The internal directory blinked and my name vanished. It was efficient. 30 seconds. Maybe less. I had built systems that worked like that when someone decided you were a liability. At the turnstiles, a familiar voice carried from behind the glass. Marcus was laughing loud. Open. Unbothered. Someone clapped him on the shoulder. A celebration had started without me. Outside, I crossed the street and took the first open seat in a cafe. The barista asked what I wanted. I asked for whatever was fastest. The cup arrived hot enough to sting my palm. I didn't flinch. Another vibration. This one landed like a slap. Internal notice termination for professional incompetence. Effective immediately. No signature. No explanation. Just enough language to poison a reference check and keep mouths shut. Across the street, the building glowed. Lights on. Meetings rolling. My work humming without me. A man I used to trust stepped out onto the sidewalk. Phone pressed to his ear. Already telling someone I was a problem that had been solved. If I wasn't scared, what was I waiting for? The answer settled in my chest. Steady and practical. I watched the doors. Counted breaths. Let the first wave pass. A text broke through from an unknown number. We need access. Now. Another followed. Sharper. This isn't funny. I set the phone face down. Took a sip. The heat grounded me. Inside. Someone raised their voice. A hand hit a table. Through the glass, a security guard leaned toward a desk, listening harder than before. My phone buzzed again. Longer this time. Then it rang. I didn't answer. My phone rang again. Different number this time. I answered before it could stop. We're activating the certificate. A voice snapped, clipped and breathless. Compliance needs your sign-off. You already have it, I replied. You made sure of that? A pause. Paper shuffling. Someone covering a receiver. That's not what I mean. I know. The line went dead. I watched the screen fade and felt the familiar tug of a system pulling too hard. Too fast. The certificate wasn't cash. It never had been. It was permission, federal permission, to keep a merger alive, to keep trucks moving, to keep contracts from freezing. Without it, the deal collapsed in public. Ugly ways. Another call pushed through. This one stayed quiet for a beat longer, like the person on the other end was choosing words carefully. We need the back-end verification. The voice finally said, auditors are asking. You fired the only person authorized to touch it. Silence stretched. A chair scraped. Someone muttered a curse. Just give us the access and we'll make this right. I laughed once. Short. Write how temporary credentials. We'll clean it up later. Later was how problems grew teeth. Later was how I'd spent years smoothing edges no one wanted to see, old filings that didn't match. Dates that drifted. Reports patched together so deadlines would stop screaming. I'd held the line because the work mattered. Because people got paid when the line held. My screen lit again with a forwarded message. Urgent certificate holder assumes responsibility for all historical compliance matters. The header was bold. The attachment was the version Marcus had been so eager to own. Why would anyone fight to take responsibility for something this dangerous? A new text arrived. Sharper than the last. This is getting bigger than you. I typed. Erased. Then typed again. It always was. Across the street. Someone pulled the blinds halfway down. Inside, voices rose and fell in a rhythm. I recognized the sound of a system, realizing it had lost the person who knew where the bodies were buried. My phone rang once more. I let it ring, then sent a single email to an address I hadn't used in years. attaching one file and nothing else. The reply came back faster than I expected. Received. We'll be in touch. I set the phone down and stood. The call came from a blocked line. I answered it because not answering would have been louder. We need live verification, a woman said without preamble. Keys clicked in the background. Third-party audit. Now, schedule it, I replied. Through legal. We were told to proceed immediately. Another voice cut in. Confident. Rehearsed. The certificate holder will present. The word holder landed wrong. I pictured Marcus standing where I used to stand, shoulders squared, smiling like paper could replace a system. Minutes later, my phone lit up again. No blocking this one. Get on. Marcus snapped the moment the call connected. The sound of a room buzzed behind him, chairs moving, a projector fan whining. They're asking for the back end. You've got the certificate. I have your certificate. Then you have what it gives you. A beat. The fan grew louder. The access isn't working. I imagined him turning the pen between his fingers. The one he'd signed with. That's not possible. You changed the permissions, I said. You terminated my access. I'm authorizing you right now. I don't have authority anymore. I kept my voice even. If I log in, it's unauthorized access, federal offense. Someone near him whispered too close to the phone. The whisper turned sharp. A chair scraped. Don't play games. What kind of system collapses the moment its creator is erased silence? Then a forced laugh that fooled no one. Just give us temporary credentials. There aren't any. Then recreate them. You can't recreate a trail you deleted. The room on his end erupted overlapping voices. A muffled curse. The click of a mouse slammed too hard. He pulled the phone away, then back. You built this? He said, slower now. Fix it. I did build it. I paused. And you fired the person who could touch it. A new voice cut through. Tight and controlled. Mr. Hale. We're recording this session. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Stand by, he told them. Then to me, low and dangerous. You're making this worse. I'm staying within the rules you enforced. The line went dead. A notification followed, meeting invite marked urgent. Another labeled escalation. I didn't accept either. Instead, I forwarded the missed call log to the same address as before and watched the typing indicator flicker to life. Pressure was building. I could feel where it would break. The headline hit before breakfast, then another, then 3 more, all saying the same thing with different verbs. Former executive hid corporate assets. Sources question Ashley's stability. Vindictive exit leaves company exposed. My phone filled with messages that weren't really messages. Requests framed as concern. Warnings framed as advice. A producer left a voicemail that started friendly and ended sharp. If you don't respond, the narrative hardens. I'm not responding. I told the next caller. You're letting him define you. I'm letting him talk. A text from Marcus followed. All confidence and teeth. Fix this, or I will. I didn't reply. By noon, an email circulated with my name bolded and my work reduced to a phrase I'd never used. Hidden assets. It was loud, sloppy, designed to corner me into a denial so he could argue intent. My attorney called once. I let it ring. Then answered on the second attempt. They're escalating. She said, if you go quiet, it looks like guilt. I know. Then why? Because silence is cleaner. She exhaled. They'll come after your credibility. They already are. What about an interview? A short statement. No, a pause. Paper shifting. Then tell me what you want to do. I want to open the door. To what everything? I sent one form, no press, no spin. A voluntary cooperation request. Filed straight and narrow. My name at the top. Signature steady. The confirmation came back with a reference number and a promise of contact. My attorney went quiet again, then laughed once. Surprised. You're inviting scrutiny. Why would someone volunteer to be investigated? Another call broke through. This one hot. You think this makes you look innocent? Marcus's voice cut through the line. You think regulators are your friends? I think records are... You're cornering yourself. I'm stepping into the light. You don't get to control this anymore. I never did. He hung up. An alert followed from a trade desk I recognized. Subject line clipped and urgent. Merger review status updated. I closed the app without opening it and forwarded the notice to my attorney with 2 words. We're live. My phone buzzed again, longer this time. I let it buzz. The music was loud enough to cover raised voices, which was why he chose the corner by the bar. I felt him before I saw him too close. Breath sharp with alcohol and certainty. You think filing paperwork makes you untouchable? I turned my glass once on the counter and kept my eyes on the room. It makes me documented. You're playing a dangerous game. His shoulder blocked my exit. People go to prison for what you pulled. A laugh bubbled up behind him. Someone clinked glasses. He leaned in, lowering his voice like that made it private. Drop the cooperation stunt. Give me the access. I'll make this go away. I met his eyes then. Close enough to see the tick start in his jaw. Section of 4.2 of the certificate. I said quietly, it contains a systemic flaw. He blinked. The tick paused. I spent 2 years keeping it from triggering. I continued. Every day. Without me. The dam doesn't hold. He smiled. Slow and indulgent. The way people do when they think they've caught a lie. You expect me to believe you built a trap and forgot to tell anyone I didn't forget? Then you hit it. His voice rose. A few heads turned. That's fraud. I prevented harm. You protected yourself. He straightened. Confidence flooding back. And now you're exposed. What happens when the person who held the floodgates leaves a server slid between us with a practiced apology? Marcus took the opening, stepping back just enough to look generous. You're bluffing, he said, louder now. For the benefit of the nearby suits. You always were dramatic. I finished my drink and set the glass down. Then you have nothing to worry about. He laughed again, sharper this time, and clapped once as if the matter were settled. Enjoy your night. As he walked away, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then kept moving. Across the room, a man with a conference badge mouthed my name, uncertain, and then looked past me toward Marcus with open concern. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A single line from my attorney, they're asking for logs. I didn't answer. I watched Marcus disappear into the crowd, still smiling, still convinced. The music swelled. Somewhere behind the walls, systems strained. I picked up my coat. The first alert came before dawn, then the second. By the third, the tone changed from technical to human. Transactions are stalling, a voice said when I answered. Breath tight. Nothing's clearing. Pause them. I replied. We did. Partners are freezing funds. Another line cut in. Overlapping. The merger just entered compliance review. A chair scraped somewhere on the other end. Someone swore under their breath. I stayed quiet long enough for the room to fill the space without me. We need clarity. The first voice pressed. Now, you already chose it. Minutes later, a different call. Lower. Careful. I'm looking at the document he made you sign. I recognized the cadence before the name. He didn't offer it. He didn't need to. This isn't a transfer. He continued. Pages rustled. It's an assumption. Assumption of what? I asked. Knowing the answer. Liability. All of it. A pause. Historical filings. Environmental gaps. Tax exposure. Another pause. Longer this time. Buried violations. How do you escape responsibility once you've signed for it? He exhaled. He didn't take an asset. No, I said. He adopted everything. A muffled argument flared behind him. Someone demanded timelines. Someone else asked for numbers and didn't like the sound of the reply. The line went quiet, then returned. They're asking how this happened. Tell them to read what he signed. They are. A new notification slid across my screen. Partner conference call canceled. Another followed. Funding hold in effect. My phone buzzed again. Harder this time. I didn't answer. I watched the timestamp stack and felt the weight shift. Slow but undeniable. The lawyer spoke once more. Voice stripped of pleasantries. He wants to unwind it. There's nothing to unwind. He doesn't understand. He will. The call ended. A message arrived from a number I hadn't saved. No greeting, no threat. Just 3 words. Call me. Now. I locked the screen and stood. Outside, The day was already moving. Inside the system, the first domino had fallen, and the rest were lining up behind it. The call came through as a missed video. Then a second later, as a voice line, I answered the voice. "He's losing control," the lawyer said. No greeting. Paper crackled. Breath uneven. I'm walking into his office now. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next sound was a door hitting a wall. A chair scraped hard enough to screech. "You didn't acquire $10 million, the lawyer snapped, words landing like blows. "You admitted responsibility." A pause. Something heavy set down. "For $50 million in tax and environmental exposure." He continued. "Historical. Ongoing." Another pause. Tighter. "And you did it voluntarily." Marcus's voice broke through, louder than I'd ever heard it. "That's not what the document says." "It says assumption," the lawyer cut back. "You signed for everything." A breath, then smaller, frantic. "Undo it." "There's nothing to undo." I could picture the desk, the spread of papers, the pen lying where it had been left, the same weight, the same click. "She trapped me," Marcus said. "She hid defects. She contained them," the lawyer replied. "You took custody. What kind of person steals poison and calls it treasure?" The lawyer's voice dropped. "Controlled now? Colder. Regulators are asking why the certificate holder accepted liability while terminating the only authorized operator." Silence stretched long enough to hear a window unit hum. "You need to stop talking," the lawyer added. "Right now." A muffled sound followed. Sharp and final. The line went quiet. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. Over and over, the name flashing until it dimmed. I didn't answer. I watched the screen lock and felt the room steady around me. A new message arrived from my attorney. They're scheduling interviews. Another followed. Closer together, board meeting called. I picked up my bag. The pressure had shifted. It wasn't coming at me anymore. It was closing in on him. And it was moving fast. The invite arrived without a subject line. Just a time and a link. I joined muted. Faces filled the screen in quick succession. Tight smiles, eyes darting. No one mentioned Marcus at first. They didn't have to. His chair was empty. "We need to stop the bleeding," someone said, leaning forward. "Effective immediately." A nod. Another. The decision moved fast once it finally moved. The word terminated landed cleanly, like it had been rehearsed. A different voice cut in, softer. "Markets are stabilizing." Relief flickered. Then calculation. "Ashley," the chair said, finally looking at me. "We want you back." The offer came layered. Title restored, salary doubled, equity on top. They spoke as if the paper could fix what the paper had broken. "You built this." Another added, "We need continuity." "I built systems," I replied, "not shields." A pause. Someone cleared their throat. "We can make this right. By paying me, by acknowledging your value, is going back ever the same as winning." They waited. The silence stretched until one of them shifted. "Uncomfortable in a way money doesn't cure. You only looked at the paper." I said, "You never looked at the person." The chair tried again. "This is the best path forward for you," I answered. A message slid in on my phone while the board watched my face for a reaction. Regulators confirmed interviews. Another followed. Marcus retained separate counsel. "I won't be returning," I said. "You have what you need." "What about the certificate? You already chose its holder." The call ended with polite nods and promises no one expected me to believe. When the screen went dark, my phone rang once, then stopped. An alert followed from a trade desk I recognized. Leadership change announced. I picked up my coat. The pressure point had shifted again. The board had cut loose the weight to stay afloat, and the current was carrying everything else downstream. The call came from my attorney while I was packing the last box. They filed. She said, "Criminal charges, multiple counts." I let the silence sit. Not relief, not triumph, just a clean edge where the noise used to be. "And the severance," she asked. "It's there," I said. Trigger it. That clause was buried. It was meant to be. By the afternoon, the confirmation arrived. The settlement cleared under the old contract terms, the ones I'd insisted on years earlier when Marcus laughed and told me I was overthinking it. I forwarded the funds to a new account and closed the old one without ceremony. A few days later, a former client called. No small talk. Are you taking meetings? I'm building something. I said, if you're patient, I am. We met the next morning, then another, then one more. No banners, no announcements, just work, done clean. On the waterfront. The rain had finally stopped. I walked with my phone in my pocket and the city moving on without waiting for me. Messages stacked and cleared. One from the board, carefully worded. One from a reporter, politely persistent. I answered neither. Marcus thought he took my sword. He never realized it was a timed charge. And he pulled the pin himself. I stopped near the water and watched the ferries come and go. The noise faded to a level I could live with. Here's the lesson I earned. Silence is not surrender when it's chosen. Boundaries matter more than titles. If someone demands your compliance at the cost of your name, walk away and let the paper speak for itself. Thank you for staying with me through this. If you've been in a room where pressure tried to make your decisions for you, I'd like to hear how you handled it. Share your thoughts in the comments. If stories about holding your ground resonate, stick around. I'll be here, telling more of them.